One more time, Ravin.
So the Ben Ish Chai was trying to understand this difficult sugya, and he couldn't get it. And finally, after days, he finally figured it out. It was really hard for him. Then he went to his shiur the next morning, and the 16-year-old boy, he discussed the problem. The 16-year-old kid gave him the answer. And he said, well, God bless you, son. You know, that's amazing that you have such a mind. And he couldn't figure it out. And that night he had a dream. And he said Elijah came to him and explained to him that it was only because he had opened it up in like the spiritual worlds that this now became available to everybody. And so the 16-year-old wasn't really such a genius that he thought. It's actually that he was picking up on the wisdom that was put out into this, what Sheldrake calls a morphic field, that that the boy was able to pick it up. The story is told another way. I saw it published also in the Chabad magazine that didn't mention a rabbi was working on it. He got the same problem with sugya, and then he walked into the marketplace next day when he finally figured it out. And two workmen, Jewish workmen, were sitting in a lunch break and discussing Talmud, and they were coming up with the answer. And the same thing, he went to his Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, no, it's because you opened it up. So what Sheldrake's idea is that there are like grooves or pathways, and that the more a certain action or a thought is used, it draws people into it. So that he calls it morphic fields or resonance or resonant fields, and that these also have an effect upon our life, our thinking, so that in a sense, what our grandparents did or thought actually does influence us. It's still surrounding us in a way. Again, it's not something you can measure. We don't have the ability to measure it now, but it was a fascinating idea. If you ever want to read the book, it's called The Presence of the Past by Rupert Sheldrake. He has some lectures online. I sent him the story. He found it fascinating because it matched exactly his theory. He also has other interesting ideas. He says he thinks that the laws of nature actually change a little bit, which is the Rebbe's have said. He says that the speed of light has been measured different times, and they've actually come up with slightly different speeds of light. Different, like in the 1920s, the speed of light was measured differently. And most people nowadays say, well, it's just their instruments weren't as good. But actually, the instruments were checked, and they're getting new readings with those same instruments now. I mean, you're talking about, very, very small differences, but even Aaron Schaefer can talk to this, that we say that there's not really laws of nature. We call nature as teva, which means a custom. It's a habit of nature. Hashem makes the nature, but it's changeable. Rabbis have talked about there can be changes in nature. So these are not standard scientific ideas, but again, the mechanistic view of the world is the standard model which all college students learn, and it's very hard to break out of that that sort of a mental cage. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts?
I just want to say that first of all, Ruvain, that was a beautiful presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that, generally science is descriptive. And Einstein was once asked, what is your goal in life? And his answer was to trace his path after him. In other words, he simply wants to observe what God had created. And that's from a man who was not really very religious. Whatever we do in science and whatever we look at, it will always be observing from the outside. And just a personal note, one reason I turned to Tanya is because after getting a degree in physics and being a dentist, I was left with no satisfaction and I was looking for more. So that's pretty much my answer to what science will give us. There's so much you could say about Darwin or quantum mechanics or any branch of science and discuss it ad infinitum, but it still comes down to the fact that we do our experiments and we observe, and we can never look behind the curtain. And if you want to look behind the curtain, then you have to turn to other sources. That's my big statement for the day.
That makes sense.
I would say that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just confirming, and Western education tends to be all left brain, and we tend to dismiss or consider as insufficient or inferior, the right brain more intuitive qualities. And that's where the art comes in. And just because it doesn't fit into the framework and the paradigm of the left brain, because we can't understand it, we push it off. Go ahead, David.
Oh, I just wanted to say, like I told Lev many times in our when we're in a car or on our way to a coffee, the science tells us only how things work. A molecule comes together, and we can observe that in a laboratory. But God is in the why. When you say when you want to know why, that usually is the God question. It's a very difficult question. Because how we can observe with our senses, but why is it working? Why do molecules or particles, they react to each other and then they create something, a material, a metal, sand, organic stuff like our bodies, a wood, whatever. How does that become that thing? This is the why question. So we can only know how. We can observe molecules of wood and see if what is the pattern to make, that is particularly a wood pattern, and then we'll know, okay, this kind of molecule pattern or particle pattern will probably create a wood, blah, 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 blah. You understand where I'm getting, what I'm getting at. But why does it work from the beginning? That is the God question. And I sometimes think that the best way to go forward, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a scientist, nothing.
It's okay.
Nothing of that. But I read a lot because I love to know things. So I always think that we should, I know it's a little bit an unconventional kind of thought, but in this Perplexed group, it's we can share these kinds of thought. I think that mostly for religious people, for believers in God, for people who want to follow the Torah, want to follow Judaism, I think that the best way is to actually separate God from scientific knowledge, because I personally believe that there's a thing in Judaism that we call Yehud Hashem. That's how would you say Yehud Hashem?
Unity?
Unity,
Unity is
oneness.
no, not Yehud, but Yehud
Seclusion.
with
You might
two
want to say
U's.
seclusion.
Just taking God and making it so separate from reality that it's the only word that I don't, uniqueness, unique, okay, and it's almost as if to say, because people in the past, Judaism basically, the principle of Judaism is to reject avodah zarah, and avodah zarah usually was worshiping something that is there. So a totem or a statue, and that statue is the god, or believed to possess the spirit of that particular god. But they needed a statue to worship. They needed a thing. And what Judaism did is it left God in the spiritual realm that we do not see, and took away the statue, took away the physical thing to worship. And then you basically worship the nothing, which is the ultimate knowledge. This is the amazing thing that Judaism did. Because once you take everything in nature, because the statue is from stone or from wood or from some, I don't know, from clay or whatever they were making the elilim, right? But say, wait a minute. These are materials that God has created. It doesn't make sense. How do you worship God with something that God himself has created? It's It doesn't make any sense. You can take a man and worship man, and this is exactly what Christianity has done, and has canceled Judaism completely. It's the opposite of Judaism. And so once you take everything away and you say, I don't know anything, and that nothing is God, then your mind is open to research. I think that this is the thing that has enabled science. And maybe this was the thing, that the inspiration of God for us to, for human beings to start researching the world. It took a lot of time because up until the 20th century, so almost 19 from Judaism it's like 3,000 years or something. From Christianity it's 2,000 years. The evolution of human knowledge was very slow, but it has exploded in this last century. But it was on the way, and the way started with pushing away all the false gods of clay and wood and stone, and and so I sometimes think that even saying this is, please try to understand me, even saying that God does not exist is the great thing you can say about God. That is completely removing all borders. Because if you worship something that exists, it's already Avodah Zarah.
I'm reminded of Rambam in Mor Nevuchim. It says you can't say really anything about God. You can only say what God isn't.
Exactly.
But
saying
you
to
can't say
remove the
what he is.
materiality of God.
Yeah.
What do you say?
As far as
Are you saying remove the materiality of God?
Completely.
Yes.
Completely. What happened? Well, let's imagine that this is the universe. This is where the universe has expanded in the last 15 billion years. Okay, let's just imagine. These are the borders of where we are, somewhere, somewhere there, like a very, very little spot. What's out of the borders of the universe? Is there other universes out there? Where is the universe expanding into?
And who made the container, or the lack of container that it's expanding into?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I would say that if there is a physical entity, okay, like that has a body that plays with us, that this universe is the experiment that this entity creates every day, plays with every day, then that physical entity is not God, because it's a physical entity. So God has to be above that.
Yep.
It has to be nothing. Nothing. So I believe that it exists. This is the paradox of God. And I think that God is in the paradox. And that's why I always say, if you cannot accept the idea of the paradox of existence, that's fine. It's difficult, and sometimes it's mind-boggling, I know, but you have to accept it, because otherwise the thing it leads to, by the way, in many areas, I think also of everyday life, is hypocrisy. Because if you understand paradox, you can understand people, and you can understand the different ways that people think, and it brings
you can
people
understand paradox. Maybe you can
together.
understand yourself too.
Yes, yeah. And you know that you're not perfect. You are a product of something that is completely paradoxical.
Yeah.
It's my take on it.
I was thinking what Karen said about our culture so left brain. I saw one writing or word of a Kabbalist who explained that one reason he explained we are in exile is that Judaism, particularly Ashkenazic Judaism, became so totally left brain and so totally, analysis oriented, and it totally thrown out the right brain, intuitive, mystical side. It was like we exiled the Shekhinah, because the Shekhinah is more right brain, feminine. And so the Shekhinah was exiled, and we went into exile with the Shekhinah. And with the coming of the Baal Shem Tov, the return of the the mystical, the more right-brained, emotional side. As we welcome that back, so the Shekhinah is bringing us out of exile now.
I like that.
Well, my Aaron, sorry, not Aaron, Ruben. My take on that is a little bit different. I'm a little bit more, because I am more inclined to Karaite Judaism. I would say that my uh, my angle on it is a little bit on more on the Methuselahite kind of not it's I think that what I'm saying is very non-spiritual. I come from a sort of a non-spiritual thing, but trying to be as
Well,
rational as my
Yeshi,
brain can be.
you're a Yeshayahu guy, Yeshayahu Leibowitz guy, and he's very cognitive. He's very analytical.
Yes. Yeah.
One thought I had when I was doing this lecture is, both these things, the inner workings of the cell, how life is created, the complexity of it, and the beginning of the universe. It makes me think of, like the Kabbalists say that there's two things that you can't understand really too deeply, is Maisa Bereshit and Maisa Merkava. So for me, like the fine-tuning the universe is like Maisa Bereshit, and the complexity of life and its mysteriousness is like Maisa Merkava, vaguely, It's two aspects of reality that are just profoundly awe-inspiring, and we'll never understand everything. We just have to accept that. I think
Yeah, exactly.
the
This is exactly, and this is
people
where
like
the paradox comes in.
people like that guy Lawrence Krauss I was mentioning, is just his idea is that we don't need God. We just, where the universe come from, we just don't know yet. We'll figure it out. Like no.
I think everybody knows a joke about scientists and the God and the sand. You know that?
Bring it up.
Well, it's like scientists came to God and said, listen, we don't need you anymore. I mean, thanks for helping us out, but now we evolved society. We have all we need, and you can go. And God said, well, okay, I don't need it. I can go, but do you mind just one more test in the end? You said you can do everything I can. Yeah, we can make a tree and just synthesis. We take biology elements, so hydrogen and lithium and this, put a machine and comes in the tree. We can do all that. He said, but can you do it the same way that I do it? What do you mean? Well, I did it from the dust of the earth. Yeah, we can do it from dust to earth. Okay, well, do you mind to try to show me how? Sure, let's take some dust. Hold it. Get your own dust.
Makes me
Yeah, I think you told me this in the car, Lev.
I might have.
It makes me think of Moshe before Paro, the magicians, trying to match everything. There comes a point. Oh, finger of God.
Yeshayahu Leibowitz was, by the way, he was completely Orthodox. He was not a Karaite Jew. He was totally Talmudic, mainstream Jew. But he was the Rambam for him was everything.
I read a little bit of him. I can't really figure out if he believes in God or not, though.
And nobody can. No, really, nobody can. Most people, he was like a magnet to many people who came to him for questions about everything from religion to physics, not physics, chemistry, which is biochemistry. And he was a doctor, and he was a biologist and a chemist. He had like 4, I think, doctorates in 4 different fields. And so people are coming to it with personal questions. What am I to do? My parent, I don't know what to do with my parents, and this and that. And many people say that many people who have been thinking or have been on what we call a spiritual journey, okay, asking themselves questions, maybe on the way to tshuva, make tshuva or something. When they spoke with Leibowitz, they immediately said, okay, tshuva is not is not the way to go, is not the way to go. And very few people have actually said, you know, maybe God is you know, is the way to go. And like me, because of Leibowitz, I was after many years I started visiting the synagogue because I found him to be so profound. I thought that those who actually became completely atheist, and I was like, he opened like this door in my brain that no one has ever been able to do, because his Yehud Hashem is so strong that it hits you in the face. He says, you live in this world, you do Avodat Hashem in this world, and a lot of people can't do it because the world is difficult and hard, and there's hardship, and there's violence, and there's sometimes you're ridiculed for doing that. You're ridiculed for fasting on Yom Kippur. Why do you fast? You know, what's going on? What do you keep the Sabbath for? And also, and of course, other everyday hardships of life. You know, you do have money, you don't have money, you get sacked out of work, whatever. It's a difficult world. You have to survive, and you have to do avodat Hashem in this world. And that for me was actually enough. I said, okay, maybe I have to rethink something here, you know. So I'm concentrated on this world.
I mean, Aaron, do you have anything to add? You didn't say anything?
I just want to say that the presentation was excellent. I missed the first couple minutes, but what I heard was excellent. And it reminded me of there's a verse from Eov that's always quoted in the books of Chassidut. Mibsari echaza Eloha. From my flesh, I can see God.
Right.
And Hasidic rabbis always quote this verse to say that if we want to get greater appreciation for God's greatness and maybe some sort of hint into how he works in the cosmos and in the world, we should contemplate on our own physical, psychological makeup that we can see, how our body functions, how our intellect and emotion function. And by contemplating and extrapolating, we can come to some sort of to the edge of understanding of something of godliness. And so you see Chassidut does that over and over again, and this presentation very literally does it. In other words, by peering deeper and deeper into the actual work of the physical creation, like Dr. Wolf showed us with the DNA and so on, it just without much contemplation, it gives you great appreciation. So it's very enlightening.
Very interesting. Howard, any more thoughts? You spoke a little bit, but anybody else?
I have a question for Bob. Can you hear me, Bob?
I can hear you, Howard.
Do you think we could convince Hershey to tune into some of these?
Rabbi Hirsch,
Mm-hmm.
I think we can convince, he probably has very little time, but I think we could convince him to listen to the recordings, yes.
Yeah.
Because I think occasionally Rabbi Friedman, I think Rabbi Friedman occasionally listens to the recordings.
Okay, well, as long as okay, great, wonderful, good to hear.
I was thinking of something you said, David, that you think, we should keep science and religion separate. One of the speakers I listened to, that fellow Kenneth Miller, who's a religious Christian, he actually testified that there were several places in the States where, like once in Georgia, also in Philadelphia, Devon, Philadelphia, where the school board tried to have intelligent design added to the curriculum. And in most of these places was cut down sometime by judges. But what Dr. Miller said is that he doesn't think they should try to mix science and religion because it starts becoming like a conflict, one or the other. And he doesn't want kids to feel there has to be a conflict between the two. He's personally religious and he doesn't feel that they should be fighting each other or, vying for control over each other. And they should be clearly kept separate so as not to that children can get confused if they think they have to choose one or the other. It's an interesting point of view.
That makes education indoctrination then rather than awakening their own
Well,
facilities.
that's the only thing. There's an interesting it was a study done. Why have so many why has religion declined so much, like in the United States particularly? And why have so many fewer kids show any interest in it? And they looked at various reasons, science, technology, all those things. But they found the most compelling reason was that the educational system had been gradually minimalizing religion. And rather, because when I was a kid, when 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade, I mean, the teachers would sometimes mention God, and they encouraged us to go to, time, whether it was time after school. They set some time where you could go for religious training. But it gradually disappeared. And what he says is basically they claim the educational system was taken over by more leftist teachers. The whole teaching, the whole teaching profession became more leftist and started treating religion more like a cute hobby, but basically something irrelevant to daily life. And the kids picked up on this, and basically they indoctrinated a whole generation of people to dismiss religion as something irrelevant or just a sideshow.
Wow. And I've seen something that says that if you deny the spiritual component of our beings, then science becomes a substitute for it. And it's like cutting off half your brain. Or half of your
There's an
whole
expression that science without religion is lame, and in fact it is.
Yes.
Well, the Rebbe's one of his big pushes was try to even just get a moment of silence in schools, just so children for 1 minute a day could have to stop and think about God. But again, see, that would be the school at least acknowledging maybe it's something more than just a cute hobby or something irrelevant. And I know one psychologist, Jordan Peterson, said that basically teachers, schools of education, at least in the United States and Canada, have become basically places for preparing teachers to become leftist indoctrinators, people who indoctrinate kids in leftist ideology. And I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Well, I think it comes to me the thought that in the Torah, in the Garden of Eden, that's a mistake Eve made, because God didn't tell her not to do science. God told her don't eat of this tree, but He didn't say don't touch it. But when the serpent talked to Eve, and she says, "What's the problem with the tree?" She said, "Well, God says don't eat, don't touch it." Well, God never said don't touch it. He said you can go with the science, but just remember, don't eat of it. Don't make it a Tower of Babel. So God says in that to Eve, sure, learn your biology and science and all anything you want, but just remember what comes first.
Yeah, make your own sand. Make your own sand.
Make your own
Yeah.
sand.
Well,
Yeah.
they always say Torah is like food. Torah should be our food. It should be what nourishes us. Science is not nourishing. I mean, you can see it. This generation of kids raised in atheism and science has just about the highest rate of depression, anxiety, and suicide that's ever been recorded in peacetime.
Well, somebody before we finish, somebody have to say something else right now, because we don't want to end on that note. When Narun just said science and depression, let's say something positive. Maybe a good
I
joke
could
or
say
something.
something nice.
Go ahead, Bob. Say something on the light
Yeah,
side.
years ago, I took a Jeep tour of Mitzpe Ramon, you know, the crater by the Breshit Hotel. Do you guys know that?
Oh, we'll go there
It's a
all the
meteor
time.
crater, yeah.
Yeah, well, anyway, in that tour, the guide presented a Torah view of the creation of that geological formation. And it was so beautiful and so believable and so opposite to what you would learn in a geology class that to this day, I cannot get over it, that we are truly indoctrinated in school, and Torah certainly gives us a different way of looking at the world.
And that's a very positive way to finish, guys. I think if no other comments, we have only 8 minutes left. I guess thank you for so much, Ruben, for your very enlightening, interesting, fascinating
You're welcome.
presentation. And we all enjoyed. I'm sure
And
we'll.
we'll talk about your idea.
Okay, for next Tuesday, any particular thoughts? If or not, just during the week, think about it. What we'll present next time? Maybe whatever ideas you might have. Anybody has a thoughts right now? We can wait during the week and just shoot me a note or something. Not just to me, but to the whole group, to Perplexed.
Maybe go back to what's going on in Israel over the weekend when I was at the congregation where I'm affiliated. There was mention that 200,000 Israelis showed up in protest, which would be the equivalent of several million Americans showing up. And I don't know the details, but I'm curious.
I was in Jerusalem on Sunday, and there were no 200,000. There were maybe, I don't know how you estimate, but if it was 100,000, I would be shocked. I would think it's more like 50 or 60.
Yeah,
maybe.
exactly. Yeah,
Just
Just
as far as that's concerned. But that doesn't change the issue. The issue is still an issue, but the numbers are greatly exaggerated.
Okay, unless there were people in other places, maybe.
Could be.
David is thinking at some point to get us a little bit of Karaites. He said, you know, the guy who is like a chief rabbi of Karaites. If I know if you'll have enough time. If dude, that's another thought.
to have I can try and talk to him if he wants to
Sure.
join the Perplexed.
Just keep in mind how open-minded we are.
How perplexed we are. How perplexed we are.
just imagine in a normal, a conventional Judaism, so to speak, it will be a screen like this, and as soon as what Karaite mentioned, the screen will just go blank. Boom, 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 boom. People will just answer.
I can only say that again, Leibowitz, he said about Judaism something that is so right. He said, it doesn't matter to what kind of group you're affiliated within Judaism. So if you're a Hasidic or Litai or Masorti we have a list of mitzvot, and basically in an idyllic world, all Jews, they do these mitzvot. They build the sukkah on Sukkot, they do the Yom Kippur, the Pesach, the Shavuot, everything. And this is, if you do these things, you're a Jew. And then what is your philosophy? In Judaism, it's all open. It doesn't matter, because we have a thing that we go about, and that is the mitzvot. Well, and we all accept the mitzvot. So this is our common denominator. We all fast on Yom Kippur and ask for God's forgiveness and blessing for the new year. We build a sukkah. We do this. We do that. We celebrate Purim. All of those things all Jews do. Then we can argue. Okay, Hasidim says this, and the Litaim and Karaites, they don't even care about the Torah Shebel Peh, and these and those and the others. It doesn't matter. The thing is, the mitzvot are the same. So the Torah is the same, at least the written Torah.
So maybe if you can touch to the guy that you know, or do it. But in the meantime, just to finish maybe just my thoughts for next time, and we'll finish on this. I'll try to make a light note. I always wonder how strong my faith is, yes or no. And I'll say, if I have a strong faith in God, and this is Bob and Howard in a group right now, my faith is not so strong. Why am I afraid of dentists? And maybe we'll finish on that note, guys, tonight's evening. What do you think?
Because
Have a
your
good-
faith is strong, but your teeth are not.
I broke my teeth on Toro. I'm afraid I'm dentist now. Guys, just want to get something nice. I kind of ended. So have a great week. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom. You're gonna send some ideas, and next time, Tuesday at 8 o'clock Israeli time, 1 o'clock American time, 6 o'clock London time, and anytime on the North and South Pole.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Shalom.
Right.